Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Cathie Wise. I'm the Head of Industry Communications and Marketing with Sugar Research Australia. I'll commence our session today by acknowledging the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this nation and pay my respects to ancestors and to elders past and present. Today, we're hearing about managing climate variability from the perspective of how new and available extreme climate tools can help sugarcane farmers and the agricultural industry. First, though, a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded so that we can make it available online later today. The session will consist of a presentation for around 40 minutes as we hear from two presenters, followed by a question and answer session for approximately 15 minutes. During the presentation, we do ask that all microphones are on mute. However, you can type questions via the chat function at any time. If you're not familiar with the chat function, it's at the top of your screen, a little speech bubble, and you can type in there. You're also welcome to raise your hand when we come to the Q&A session following the presentations using the little hand icon at the top of the screen, and you'll be able to unmute and ask your question on the session as well if you like. Upon completion of today's webinar, as I mentioned, we will upload it to the website, so it will be available. Importantly, we do have some acknowledgements for our funding bodies and research partners. The extreme climate tools that are being discussed today were developed as part of the Forewarned is Forearmed project. The 5-year project is supported by funding from the Australian Government, Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment as part of its Rural R&D for Profit program, and it's being undertaken in partnership with 14 project partners, including SRA. The project is managed by Meat and Livestock Australia, and SRA gratefully acknowledges the co-funding received from the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries for this research activity. For those who were unable to join our session earlier in the week, we did conduct a webinar on Wednesday that examined the development and introduction of new climate extreme tools. It's not our intent to re-examine that content in detail today. It is, however, also available as a recording. What we are discussing today is how some users are using those tools and the value and the benefit that it's providing. I'll introduce Tom Bowditch, who is our first presenter today. Tom is a senior project manager with Biosecurity Queensland, which is part of the Queensland Department of Agriculture and Fisheries. Tom used the extreme climate tools during their development when they were at the experimental stage, and he'll be discussing his experience and the value that they provided. Tom, over to you.
Thanks, Cathie. Bear with me, everyone. I'll just set my PowerPoint up. It's crossed. There we go. Hi, everyone. As Cathie gave me a fantastic introduction, but yeah, my name's Tom Bowditch. I work for Biosecurity Queensland up in the Mackay region, and I'm assisting in a nationally cost-shared weed eradication program. And I've been using FWFA for a fair while. I was lucky enough to be introduced to it. So a little bit about the pest. Red witchweed is a parasitic herb found only in the Mackay region. The hosts include commercially important grasses, summer cereals, sorghum, corn, rice, and of course sugarcane. The seeds can remain viable in the soil for up to 15 years, and each of the plants can produce thousands of seeds. So initially we were dealing with sort of millions of seeds per square metre. And you can see from the images how small and cryptic the pest is. Red witchweed is an obligate parasite, meaning it needs a host to survive. It has a special organ called a historium that attaches to the roots of suitable hosts and it feeds off the plant's vascular system. So if you could imagine, it's the vampire of the plant world, causes stunting and chlorosis and reduced yield. Potential impacts are a significant reduction in crop yield, and it also adds to management costs. It could lead to trade restrictions. There's an estimated $7 billion loss from farmers in Africa to witchweeds, and the United States have been running an eradication program for 50 years, which has cost more than $50 million. Biosecurity Queensland, as I mentioned, is the agency responsible for leading the nationally cost-shared program. It's funded partially by industry as well as all the state governments. There's 8 properties involved with the program, 2 cattle, which were previously under cane, and 6 sugarcane. The total area of the farms is around 540 hectares, with 100 hectares that have been under treatment. A bit about the Mackay region. It's got a tropical climate with an average rainfall of at 1,585 millimetres, mostly through December through to March, and potential for large-scale rain events, cyclonic activity through the wet season. These are some images of the 2008 floods that hit Mackay. So part of the program is a surveillance team, and they visit each property every 8 to 10 days to enable detection and destruction prior to seeding. As we mentioned, it's a long-lived seed, so the destruction of the plants prior to the seeding is a very important part of the program. The survey team, on average per round, which is about 10 days, walk just under 400 k's with an average of team of 4 or more, depending on the time of year and how quick the plants are growing. You can see on the right there's some of the survey tracks that the team, they use GPS trackers to make sure that they're heading in the right area, and it's a bit of quality control as well. Treatment to reduce the seed bank of up to 1 million dust-sized seeds per square metre that can survive up to 15 years. So it's a pretty tricky little plant. We use a 3-pronged approach, which includes cropping of false hosts for the parasite, fumigation and herbicide application, and it's supported by research with buried seed trials which are on farm, which act as a control. You can see on the left a pretty vigorous striga plant there, and on the right there's a small petri dish. If you can see the small little dots, they're the seeds that have been collected to be analysed after the treatment out of the buried seed sachet, so that we're dealing with quite a tiny, almost invisible seed. The false host is soybean. So this exudes a stimulant called strugolactone, which triggers red witchweed germination, but attachment and subsequent growth are not supported, so the seedling dies in the ground. It's a very effective way of reducing the long-lived seed bank. However, if there is a suitable host, like a grass next to the soybean, the striga can attach to that, and that's the importance of the surveillance team coming through and mopping those ones up. Catch crops or sentinel crops such as corn are planted in rows as well, and that triggers witchweed germination, and they continue to grow and can reproduce on the host. The true hosts, such as corn, are intensively surveyed just to make sure we don't have any setbacks with plant seeding, and they're intensively monitored, and it also helps with the delimitation. So by planting the catch crops, we can make sure that the seed bank's not moving, or we've identified all the existing areas of seed bank. One of the gases we use or one of the fumigation activities we do is inject ethylene into the ground. So ethylene is a naturally occurring gas you'd find it's a ripening agent used for flowers and causes them to bloom. But if you put a brown paper bag over some bananas, ethylene is the gas that's produced. It destroys the seed bank through suicidal germination. So similar to the soybean, it promotes germination and causes the seed to die in the ground without having the ability to reproduce. The gas disperses through the soil, totally saturating the soil profile, and initiates germination. An agricultural engineer designed a tractor-mounted delivery system with tines and rollers that assist lateral and vertical spread, and this is based off the activities that happened in the United States, and it's a very effective method for also reducing the seed bank. It initiates germination, so it won't kill any seeds that aren't preconditioned. So after a seeding event, it can take 18 to 24 months before a seed is ready to germinate. And if the seed isn't at the right sort of temperature and moisture, it won't germinate as well. We also use a sterilant or fumigant called Dazzamat. So it's a dry granular powder. It's used in areas where ethylene application has been difficult and there's been previous detections and seed bank identified. It's applied to the soil surface and incorporated into the soil as well. It's activated through moisture, so it needs water to activate the powder, and it's needed within a few days of application to move the material into the soil profile. So by wetting it, it produces a chlorine gas, which is very effective at sterilising anything that's there, and it does kill any witchweed seeds that haven't been preconditioned. Herbicides are used. They're required to kill potential hosts such as tropical grasses within a crop, also during any fallow period in zone A's, which are our treatment areas. So any grasses and broadleafs, just to make sure we're not getting too much of a weed seed bank. We use pre and post-emergent herbicides. Depending on the time of year and how much rain we've had, we can use helicopters, tractors, side-by-sides, or simply backpack spray units. Germination of the plant is very dependent upon rainfall, so it's kind of our limiting factor up here, the rain and the temperature. It has been detected in every month of the year, but peak detections are normally around March, April, when we've had a bit of rain and the grasses are growing quite well and throwing out a lot of stimulant into the soil. You can see in the background there, the blue peaks are the rainfall, and then the red peaks were when plants were detected. So there's a definite relationship you can see there between the rain and the number of detections or observations. So in mid-March 2019, I was introduced to the Forewarned, Forearmed program in its experimental stage. I immediately saw the value of the forecasting information produced. I should say as well, we don't have access to irrigation in the soybean cropping, so knowing when the rain coming is really important for us. I think it's resulted in significant cost savings and efficiencies gained to the eradication program, and I've found it to be incredibly helpful. You can see some of the charts down there. You can get a fairly long range forecast with a box and whisker chart, and then also a weekly. So that's when we work out when we're going to be putting out our chemicals and that sort of thing. It's also really important to look after the safety of the surveillance crew, predicting heat waves. It's a hot, humid climate in Mackay, especially through the summer. So the humidity plus the temperature really adds to an increased risk to the staff getting heat stress. So by being able to predict the heat waves and keep an eye on that sort of thing, we can alter our surveillance times and any additional tasks we might put off and focus on the surveillance effort instead if we knew we had less time in the field for surveillance. Herbicide applications. So chemical costs across the treatment area vary depending on what we're using. We can use knockdowns or particular selective herbicides. They can vary in cost, and I'd say they've probably gone up even more now, but from around $3,000 to $6,000 a treatment. Helicopter application costs approximately around $8,000 for the chopper, and they risk being wasted if a significant rainfall event occurs following the rain. You can see just down the bottom there a climogram, which was used Mount Jukes is our closest station for the property, so it's the weather station we use. Soil fumigation activities. So the Dazzamat applications can be timed successfully using the rainfall forecast. So the fumigant applications are made prior to rainfall events. But it's important, as without the rainfall occurring, we'd have to hire water tankers to activate the chemical, and then they're used to apply or to activate the product. It can be expensive using water trucks over the 5 days needed, up to 1,000 days per day, and it's very hazardous to the operator because, as I mentioned before, the dry fumigant produces a sterilising chlorine gas. So by putting out the Dazzamat in the weeks before the rain, and then seeing that we've got a good rainfall event coming, the treatment can occur within weeks. We do get a bit of erosion because the habitat for witchweed is it likes well-drained, steep soils. So we try and implement things like contour banks and drains and recovering soil from drains. But if you were to hire a grader for erosion control, it can be quite expensive, up to $2,000 a day. Rainfall forecasts, which indicate dry periods ahead, can be used to maximise the time which the machinery can be hired without downtime, or additional transport fees of floating the machinery in and out of up to $700 if the operations need to be postponed. Planting decisions are really important for us. As I mentioned before, we're dryland farmers and rely on the rain for the soybean cropping. So longer term rainfall forecasts can support decisions about which blocks to prioritise for planting. That allows us to avoid issues with waterlogging or excessive drying prior to crop establishment. Potential losses in seed, fertiliser, labour and machinery costs can run into the thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. This is another one of the experimental products, but you can see there's a 100% chance of around 40 mil at least occurring for the week 24th of October to the 30th of October, and that was really good. It worked out very accurate and allowed us to get a good crop, the crop to get a good start that year. Labour deployment. So, as I mentioned before, rainfall forecasts allow for workforce planning to increase surveillance staff numbers from 6 to 8 after the first summer rains. Cost of 2 extra staff is approximately just under $3,000 per week. Work can also be called off prior to engaging the work crews to avoid further losses of up to $1,250 a day when the work crews are sent home early. It's really important that we have to be able to adjust our numbers for the survey, given that the survey periods have to be done within 10 days, because if you aren't moving through your rounds quick enough, that allows the seed potential for a plant to flower and seed, which, as I mentioned before, the seeds are very long-lived and could set the program back. We do a bit of plant hire for slushing activities and other types of things. So general machine hire can be up to $500 a day. That can be planned for forecasting in drier periods to effectively minimise the rental costs during the downtime caused by wet delays. So overall, I've found the FWFA to be a really great tool, and it is a forecasting tool. It's not a single source of truth, but I have found it to be quite accurate, and I think Robert's going to talk about it a bit, but the main thing is if you need to be looking at these things or you're not going to know that they're coming. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks so much, Tom. A reminder to those online, you can post questions in chat at any time. We'll be coming back to questions to hear more from Tom and from Robert following Robert's session. So we'll now hand over to Robert Quirk. Robert is a sugarcane farmer in the Tweed River area of northern New South Wales. He's a director on Australian Cane Farmers Association and passionate about research. Over the past 18 years on his farm, Robert has hosted the fieldwork of 12 PhD studies. He's also co-authored scientific sustainable agricultural papers for international conferences and congresses in 18 countries. And he's enthusiastic about monitoring weather and climate using a range of tools to help manage climate variability and to support decision making on his farm. So, Robert, over to you.
Thank you, Cathie. Let's hope everybody can hear me all right. Look at first of all, I'll just say a little bit about my farm. It's 100 hectares, grows about 8,000 tonnes of cane on average. We have a 1,600 mil rainfall. Last year we got 2,200, and this year already well over 1,000. I did check the tools for Murwillumbah, which is our nearest big town, and for April through to June we can expect about 380 mil. Well, I think that one got a little bit confused. On the 1st of April we got 300, but that was probably could go back into February according to the tools. But last night we had another 45, so big pumps do a lot of dewatering, and this is probably a bit of a horror to people in irrigation areas where we just pump a lot of water off. I've been involved in the project not from day one. There was a seminar, I believe, first, where a lot of people got together. I wasn't involved in that, but come in later through SRA, I believe. And yeah, we've in the original setup, the tools were put out to us. We reviewed them, told the Bureau what the value of each tool was, and that's how we come up with from a whole heap of tools to just 4 or 5. So we tested them back in those days, and so we ended up getting, well, we hope the ones that are valuable to you as farmers and researchers, and also not only cane farmers, but all sorts of farmers. The best example of that has been this year, we've got a La Nina that was predicted. I don't think anybody could predict the amount of rain that was going to be coming for that system. The South Pacific, well, the Pacific off the Australian coast is much warmer than it normally is. So it's still running about 25 degrees at our down on the Tweed. We have the influence of the East Australian current making that even warmer out off the coast. So we had a big system that was coming straight to the coast, about 1,000 kilometres square, and focusing its rainfall, first of all on the Sunshine Coast, then it moved down to Brisbane, then down to the Tweed, and all the way to Sydney. Well, then on the early April, we had another one. The system went off the coast. We're only 50 kilometres from Lismore. We got 300 millimetres. They got another massive flood. So yeah, some of these systems are not predictable, if you get what I mean. What we've based on these tools and the other prediction systems that are available to us, we were told it was going to be a La Nina year, which is normally in our valley, which is very low, and we would decide not to. Last September, we would have decided to return cane, not to plough it out or replant. So what happened? We ignored the signals. People planted soybeans and they were all lost. If you're going to use these tools as a business, then you really got to take notice of them. Thanks, Cathie. We go to the next one. I put this in just to show people that what is probably going to happen with our 2 to 3 degrees warming. At the moment, the ambient temperature globally is 15 degrees C. Back in the glacial maxima, it was only 10 or 9.5, something like that. There's still only the same amount of water on the planet as there was when it first evolved. So it can either be in ice, oceans, or on the land. So if we go to the last time we were 3 degrees warmer, which was 40 million years ago, the ocean was around 70 metres higher than it is now. During the glacial period, it was 120 metres lower. So the thermal expansion of the Great Southern Ocean, we're told every degree it warms, the thermal expansion will raise the sea level rise by 20 metres. So I'm no skeptic, but I think if we continue to go down the track we're going, we're condemning our generations to come to something that they can't live with. Thank you, Cathie. The shot on the right we had 4 metres of water. That all come in one day. It rained for a few days before, and you may be able to see some of the cars that were trapped there. There was about 800 people trapped on the highway. The highway was built to 100-year flood plus 10 centimetres, 30 centimetres, sorry, and there was 1.5 metres of water over it, to give you a bit of an idea of how bad it was. The recovery 1 month on, you can see there's some varieties there if you look closely. Little strips of yellow cane, that's Q183. It went into the heart and it's rotted. So if we've learnt anything, it's take notice of the tools and don't plant cane against them or soybeans or anything else. Yeah, the tools said don't do it, and we ended up doing it, so sorry. The decisions such as planting, including fallow, pardon me, we in wet La Nina coming years, you have to plant your cane very early. So by the end of September, we have a very short window for planting. We can't start until about the 3rd week in August because soil temperatures are too low. But as soon after that you can get the cane in, get it up. Cane that was planted late, we had the wettest November on record. Pardon me. Yeah, I've got Q183 plant cane, 2 metres of cane on it. That's the heart's dead. That's all side shot. So we'll get a return, but that's about. And yeah, we did everything right with that. Those who planted late, most of it just hasn't survived at all. So people who planted in November, December, or after the rain in November, yeah, weren't looking at the tools at all and ended up with no crop at all. Spraying and weed control. Look, Tom's already touched on it. Some of these new chemicals, some of the chemicals need rain to activate them. Some of them are UV stable. We got very good results this year with dual gold, mainly because it rained nearly every day. So if you put it on, you were sure you were going to get that 13 mil to activate it. Thanks, Cathie. These are with the changing climate, and there's no doubt that the predictions are getting more and more correct as we go forward. Longer drier periods. What we've done there is, even in our low floodplains, we've had to try to conserve moisture. So we plant, doing some green cane harvesting, most certainly retaining, if it is burnt, go for a coal burn and keep as much residue on the field as possible. Improve soil health, and we've, I'll just digress a little bit with sugarcane, and it's reported and written about that there's only enough nitrogen or N in the residue to increase your soil carbon by 0.2% every 6 years. But if you change the carbon to nitrogen ratio, the microbes will be activated and take it into the soil as soil carbon. So I've had an exponential increase in soil carbon by, I've gone from 2 and 3% up to the highest I've got 8%, which gives you organic matter of around 14%. Soil fungi, we're doing some work on that. Unfortunately, against the rules again, or the prediction, we planted soybeans, we inoculated them very similar to what you do with a culture for nitrogen. And we were hoping that would then flow onto the cane crop. Unfortunately, that is all lost. The scientists rang the other day to see if we would plant lupins as a winter crop. But the predictions, once again, are just saying, it's not going to survive. So keep doing the same thing over and over, hope for a different result. You know what that means. Our harvesters are all tracks and on GPS guidance. Can we go back? Yeah, we're going to get much hotter days. And for those who don't know what permanent wilting is, in the Southern Highlands, it probably doesn't apply to Queensland that much. But once the temperature gets to a critical level, the plants wilt and they can't recover. So the Southern Highlands in New South Wales have gone from 3 days a year to 15 days a year when this can occur, not will. More intense rainfall, so we've got to improve our drainage, plan our spraying and harvesting around that, and sea level rise. For every centimetre the ocean rises, I have to pump another 10 Olympic swimming pools of water off my farm, and that's only 100 hectares. So, yeah, I think, yeah, to be forewarned is going to be forearmed as we go forward. Thank you. Fertiliser losses can be quite high. Most of the cane in our valley following these heavy rainfall events are going quite yellow, which would indicate that most of the nitrogen has been lost. The big problem is if it goes into the atmosphere, it goes out as nitrous oxide, and it's 300 times worse for the atmosphere than CO2. Leaching is not a problem down where we are. The sediments are so fine that we don't get any leaching at all. We just get expulsion. If the water table rises, it brings it to the surface and sends it down the stream, which causes algal blooms and all sorts of things, fish kills. The soil and leaf tests, look, it's very important to do your soil and leaf test. I do leaf tests, but I've been able to reduce my nutrient inputs by increasing the carbon in the soil and then doing leaf tests to ensure that the crop would not have grown any better had I put more fertiliser on. We're all doing minimum, well, most are doing minimum to low cultivation situations, so we're not burning off the carbon, our soil becoming more healthy, and for every 1% we increase our soil carbon, we can each rainfall event you can the soil can absorb another 120,000 litres. Yeah, we've been over that and harvesting. Thanks, Cathie. So what we've had to do in this very low country is we have a bed renovator that forms the bed. We then plant above the ground and have the planters then put soil over the top of the cane sets. That gives us about 200 more mils of drainage, and some tests we did temperature wise, we're 3 degrees warmer in the mound than where we used to plant it under the ground in the trench. Thanks, Cathie. This is just a picture of, we're only half a metre above sea level. So even though I'm in Brisbane now doing this, that electric pump will be running, pumping the water off that fell last night. We get that sort of flood every, that's 3 or 4 times a year. When the 200 mil would give us a flood like that. We got the dewatering pumps at the moment are pumping out about 4 megs an hour, and we got another one we're putting in that'll increase that to 8. It's really important that we know what's coming. So, and I think that's in the next slide, Cathie. No, it's not, but look, I'll just go into that. It's really important that we, if we know there's another 200 mil coming tonight, there's no point pumping. We do pump to try and keep the ground dry for, and you'll see why when I explain this slide, as long as possible, because up to 5 days of waterlogging, the losses are very minimal, but then after that, we lose 7 tonnes per hectare per day. So we've had 2 critical events in February and the end of March, April. And what that's done is give us some fairly heavy losses without, just because the plant can't breathe. The base of the cane stalks now are sending out roots up to about 20 centimetres from the ground. So we have to have a good weather, and if the tools said that we were going to get 50 mil of rain, that's probably the trigger point. A lot of cane is still burnt in New South Wales. You would not burn cane in one of your wet paddocks. You keep that until you get a prediction of a dry period, so that we can get the minimise the damage and the recovery of the next crop. Thank you. This is, look, weed control is significant, and that slide just shows that after 12 weeks, I think it is, whatever, the crop goes from 88 tonnes per hectare to 38 tonnes per hectare, and that trial was done by BSES some years ago in every district, cane growing district in Australia, and that gave us what they did then was send that out to farmers so that they knew the damage weeds can do. And once again, this links to your chemicals. We had the wettest November on record for the whole of Australia, including where I live, and there was no weed control at all during that period, and that's most certainly reflected in the crop. So once again, if in the lead up, if there's rain coming, get out and do what you can, and then yeah, thanks, Cathie. Yeah, look, we use a whole lot of tools. The extreme tools are important. They're telling us the longer term as well as weekly. When we're looking to burn cane or fertilise or spray, radar, you're virtually on your radar checking that to see where the rain's coming, and it comes fairly quickly. We're in a caldera, a volcano. It's about 30 kilometres across and has its own little weather pattern. So sometimes it runs around the western rim of the crater. Other times it'll just come straight across. But we need to know so you can get back to the shed or stop fertilising, stop spraying with your mobile chemicals fairly quickly. A little story on Windy, the predictions were that that system only last week was going to travel south, Well, it went off the coast, and Windy predicted it fairly well. I don't know where they get their information from, but it went off the coast near Tweed Heads, picked up the East Australian current with the warmer water at about 28 degrees, intensified, missed us, and come back in at Lismore, and they had another massive flood. The Lower Richmond had the equivalent of a 74 flood after they had only a month before a maximum probable flood event of 2.5 metres higher than anything they'd ever seen before. Med-Eye for us is very, very accurate. I've talked to other farmers and it's not accurate for them. But an earth null score will just pick up where the wind is coming from anywhere in the world, and it'll show you, it'll track your cyclones a few days ahead. And I think that's it, Cathie.
It is. Thank you so much, Robert. So look, a reminder that you can type your questions into the chat or raise your hand using the reactions icon to ask questions. While I can see that Simon is typing something, I think he's looking to share something, but while we're waiting for any other questions to come through, Robert, I guess benefit of hindsight, would you have planted your soybeans, knowing knowing what you know now?
No. In a word, I shouldn't have planted them. Everybody knew we were going to get rain, and we managed to keep them alive right up until that main event in February when we got 4 metres of water. Nothing can survive that. So, no. I'll take notice of the tools in future. And I had another thing, of course, was we were trying to do that trial. So, yeah, it would have been great if they survived, but they didn't. And I think the scientists will just have to wait till next year now.
Mm-hmm. I can see we've got a question come in from Philip for Tom. And Philip is asking, are herbicide-tolerant technologies and varieties being deployed as part of striga management plans overseas?
Hi, Philip. Yeah, thanks for the question. They definitely use Roundup Ready soybean over in the States, and that's a big success for them without having to worry about, I guess, pre-emergent herbicides, that sort of things that Robert was talking about, that you need to get 15 mils of rain watered in within a week of application, and et cetera, et cetera. We were possibly looking at exploring some options with Roundup Ready cotton, because that is approved in Australia, but yeah, I'll just see what happens with that one.
Thanks, Tom. I can see Jordan has his hand raised with a question. Jordan, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Cathie. Rob, just a questions for Rob and also next for Tom. Rob, I just want to ask, you consider also the SOI, Southern Isolation Index, which is a good weather forecast also. And then, yeah, I like your presentations. Thanks, Robert.
No problem. If I get your question right, is there another site that you think we should use? Is that what you said?
Yeah, the SOI.
Look,
you consider
I think, Jordan, any information you can get as a farmer these days is going to be valuable. The climate's changing faster than anybody can adjust, so we need all the tools we can get. And yeah, I'll have a look at the one you've just suggested. So, Cathie, you might send that to everybody if you wouldn't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a boom weather. It's just a pure meteorology, and it gives you a 3 months forecast, which is
Yeah. No, I think we've got that one. Yeah. Look, the 3 month forecast for us is pretty horrible. And we've virtually had the 380 mil of rain already that we've gone well over it. We're over 450 from April, May, June. So the rest of it's going to be very dry, or you know, we're going to go way over the predictions.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Jordan.
Question for Tom. Sorry, I can see Damien. I was about to throw one, but Damien, over to you. I believe you have a question.
Yeah, hello, Cathie. Thanks for those presentations, Tom and Robert. They were really good and gave you some really practical applications of how you're using the information. I work with Department of Agriculture, and part of the Forewarned is Forearmed program, and we're available to talk to any of your grower groups. I'm in southern Queensland, so we're happy to talk to them and run grower groups through these products and how they might use them. And we're still looking for some feedback from a couple of the new products, like the two new ones that will be coming out. So if you've got any grower groups that you need someone to come along and talk to, we're happy to do that. So I'll put my contact details up there in the chat. So thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thanks so much, Damien. And the tools that Damien is referring to, there are some additional tools still in development as part of Forewarned is Forearmed. They're due to be released, I think I recall, between June and October of this year. So that will sort of round out the suite of 5 tools. Just recapping on that conversation too about the Southern Oscillation Index, and that certainly is a valuable tool from the Bureau of Meteorology. These tools are around climate extremes, so understanding the likelihood of extreme events in relation to dry or rainfall events, and also temperature extremes. So they're an addition to the suite. As Robert has mentioned, any tool is going to be valuable and help inform decision making. And in relation to that decision making, Robert, I know when we've spoken previously, you say that you're essentially looking at a range of tools multiple times a day. So it's obviously something that you consider highly critical to your business.
Oh, definitely, Cathie. And just to give you a bit of an idea how accurate METI is for us, I was in a meeting at the Bureau one day, and it was pouring rain, and I said, "Am I going to be able to get home tonight?" And they looked up our nearest site was the little village, and he said, "Yes, you'll get home as long as you're home before 2 a.m. and it's going to pour then, and they'll get 200 mil in a couple of hours." And they did. So look, any tools you can find to help you make your decisions, and I don't think any of them contradict one another. So look, use what you can. And look, we just can't afford in these tight margins to lose crops. So that $1,000 that I put into seed and culture for the soybeans would have been better off in my pocket. Yeah.
Thank you. Look, before I go on with another question, and a reminder, you're free to continue to ask questions. We have another 10 minutes or so up our sleeve. I have shared a couple of times so far today a feedback form. Before you log off today, we'd love and value your feedback. It's as simple as clicking on the link and, answering a few short questions. Obviously, we want to ensure that the webinars that we provide are useful and meaningful to industry. So your feedback on this session will be invaluable. Robert touched on the bottom line and needing to make sure that, we're managing our costs as well as possible. And certainly, Tom, that was something that you touched on during your presentation. Can you recap for us, please, how valuable those extreme climate tools were for you in managing costs for the red witchweed project that you spoke about?
Sure. Yep. I guess being a nationally cost-shared program that industry contributes to, we've got to make sure we're maximising the amount of funding we have, and not overspending or spending more money than we need to for spending's sake. So it's really important that by using these tools, that it has really had a significant effect. As I mentioned before, we don't irrigate, so Mackay has quite a dry winter the last few years, and not much water left in the soil profile to get the seedlings germinating. A lot of the infested areas are on quite steep ground that drains well. So that finding out when those initial rains are coming in October is really imperative to getting a good, successful soy crop and reducing the seed bank. And also, I guess through summer, the true hosts, the grasses, they can go really quickly if you're not keeping an eye on the rain. So by being able to keep out some of the pre-emergent herbicides, or even just a matter of I guess making sure you're not going to have rain that's going to wash off all your chemical as soon as you've applied it. It's yeah, super important.
Cathie, can I just add there that we have one grower who's on very, very low country, and he's the guy who says don't plant cane in a La Nina year. So he's had a 2-year fallow, and it's been saved him a lot of money because the cane would not have survived. So yeah, look, on top of I don't know how many watch NCIS, but you've got to use your gut as well.
Thank you. Look, if there are no further questions from people on the line, we may look to wrap it up. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. As I mentioned, we would really value your feedback about today's session, and do ask that you please take a few moments to complete the feedback form. Alternatively, feel free to email or call me directly, and I will share my details on the screen. A massive thank you to Tom and Robert for being our presenters and sharing their experience today. At the start of the session, I did mention that we also had a webinar earlier in the week. If you were unable to make it to that session, we have made that available online via our website, and I will also share a link to that as well through the chat, but you'll be able to go on to webinar and search for that on our website, and it's also available in our YouTube channel to be able to access it. I can see that Rachel is typing something in there, so we might just wait and see if she has a question. Just give her no question from Rachel. She's just typing in. So look, thank you again,
Cathie,
Robert. Yes.
Just before we go.
Yeah.
Look, if someone has a question, you can share my email as well. I don't care. I get a lot of questions from all over the world, so it'd be nice to get some from Australia.
That's wonderful. I'll dig it out and make that available in the chat. I'm not sure whether people have access to that after the session ends, but in any case, please reach out to me, and I can share those details, Robert's contact details with you. Look, thank you everyone for attending. Please keep an eye out for further webinars throughout the course of the year. We will be promoting them through our e-newsletter channel that we release each fortnight, as well as via our website. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Cathie.
Bye all.
Thanks.
Thank you.